Hello, today we're going to do a replay review of a Spirit Breaker. I think he was either offlane or roaming, and this is about in the normal MMR range. I'm not quite sure where. Now, your starting item build, I think it's good. I don't really have any qualms with it. In some cases, depending on how much roaming you can do or how offensive you can play in the first few levels, sometimes you might want to start with an Orb of Venom. But other than that, the Stout Shield is also good, because that's really good if you're fighting a lot in lane, since you'll be tanking creeps. So I don't really have anything super critical to say about that. Let's go ahead and fast forward a bit. Okay, it looks like you're going to be offlane with the Dragon Knight. Okay, you see the Bloodseeker is jungling right now. You should interrupt him in the middle of this. Oh, you misclicked. That's unfortunate. But I like how you waited for him to get low there. I think you shouldn't have necessarily gotten charge level 1. Charge level 1 is only good if you're planning on doing lots of roaming, or you get an opportunity for an early kill. And see, Bash is a lot more useful in situations like this where you're just like fighting the enemy carry and just trading hits over and over. But if you do roam a level 1 to make up for it, then that should be fine. But right now you're kind of just sitting in the trees. I know the enemy has a lot of creeps right now. So they have like 2 waves now, so you probably should sit back. But I think you could have played a little bit more aggressive earlier, when there was only 1 wave of creeps here. Yeah, see, unfortunately that's the bad part about having only charge level 1, because all you can do right there is just charge the Earthshaker, and your charge actually does not deal any damage by itself. If you don't have your Greater Bash leveled up, your charge doesn't deal any damage. Where if you have at least 1 level in Greater Bash, it deals the damage of the Bash and knocks them back. So I think having the Bash at level 1 would have been far better for you. Because you could have you can do a lot of really good trades with Spirit Breaker in lane if you get some lucky bashes. That's really where a lot of his lane presence comes from. I think you needed the charge a little earlier, but at least you got there before the... Okay, Dragon Knight didn't die, that was good. You could have responded a little sooner, but that was appropriate, I think. Yeah, you should stay in... I think you should have stayed in lane to get that experience. Because, like, there was a bunch of creeps there. And although the line was here, you still got a bunch of experience. And really, as a Spirit Breaker, you don't need much mana anyways. I think, personally, I like to go 1 level of Empowering Haste when I reach level 3. 2 levels in Charge is okay. And sometimes 2 levels in Greater Bash is fine too. But the reason I like Empowering Haste is because it increases your movement speed by a pretty decent amount. So it increases by 6%, so 2.9 times 6, that's about 17 movement speed, 15, let's round it down to 15. That's about 15 extra movement speed, and that puts you up to about a 305 base movement speed, which is actually pretty fast. And when you add boots to it, it becomes 290 plus, becomes 335 instead, which is like 20 or something. But I do think there are situations where the extra stun duration from charge comes in handy. But we'll see if you're able to make use of it. you're playing a little bit more aggressive in lane. You have full health right now, and you still have like 3 tangos. So there's really no reason to just be hiding back like this. You should really be hitting these guys when they're contesting your Dragon Knight. There's really no reason to just sit here and do nothing. Okay, Bloodseeker's back. Let's see if you go on him. You're not... maybe you didn't see him from there. Oh no, wait, you do see him. I have the fog on. I guess, are you just sitting there just to gank somebody? Because I think by playing a little bit more aggressive here, I just would have been better. Like, sure, you surprised the Earthshaker there, but by contesting the PA in lane or the Bloodseeker farming the jungle camps, you're actually going to be doing a lot more for yourself and for your team. Because you'll be actively pressuring the enemy. And you may even get kills that way, just from lucky bashes. You gonna charge? I think you should have charged earlier, but that's okay. Also, empowering haste helps a little bit in those situations where you're chasing someone after your bash, because you have more movement speed to keep chasing. And you can also use the active to gain 3% more, which is pretty nice. Okay, Orb of Venom. Usually, if I'm playing Spirit Breaker personally, I usually don't pick up an Orb of Venom if I don't buy it at the very start of the game. Just because, like, it's 7 minutes already, so that means the laning phase is probably about halfway over, at the most. Like, it might even be over before that, but the laning phase is where you get most of your use from an Orb of Venom. Oh, nice. Monkey King lived. Okay, that was a good TP top. Going 2 levels of Greater Bash level 4 is interesting. Like I said, I still think that empowering haste is pretty good for a value point, just because, like I said, it gives you a decent amount of speed. It's like almost like a windlace. And then when you have boots, it actually is a windlace. And although it doesn't sound like much, your Greater Bash honestly doesn't scale that extremely well with each single level. Like, sure, you get 8% more move speed as damage, and you get a tiny bit more stun duration, but when you skill Empowering Haste, that actually increases your Greater Bash damage as well, because it's based on your movement speed. That being said, though, I don't think it's disastrous. I just prefer getting 1 level in haste early, since I find it gives a lot of utility, and it also makes it easier for your allies to chase as well. Looks like you're going for an Urn next. I do like Urn on the hero. Not much else to say about that. I think it's a good item. I don't get it every game, but I think it's a fairly solid item this game, especially with the somewhat squishy heroes of Bloodseeker and Phantom Assassin. Okay, you are charging Slardar. Oh, looks like you used a stun too early. Okay, that was a good kill. Can you get the Magnus too? Well, that's unfortunate. Oh, well, nothing else you could have done there, honestly. Let's go ahead and skip forward a little bit more. Three levels in Empowering Haste. Not Haste, I mean, sorry. But 3 levels in the Greater Bash. That's an interesting build. I'm guessing that you're gonna either leave haste until you get your ultimate, or you max out your charge and your Greater Bash. I think it's kind of a mistake to leave Empowering Haste unleveled for that long necessarily. If you don't get it like till like now level 9 or 10, I think you should definitely get it sometime. Obviously, you get Nether Strike first, but this definitely has a good value for that 1 point, like I said. Skipping it early is okay, I think, but when you get to like reach like level 7, 8, 9 territory, you really need to get at least 1 point, I think. Just because, like I said, it helps out so much. Because, like, think of how good a Windlace is, and then think of, like, it's almost like a Windlace for your entire team, sort of. Like, even the 6% adds up more than you would think. Especially, you don't get more than 1 point in it early, but, you know, it helps. Guessing you're gonna go on this guy? I think one thing you could have done there... Okay, so, against heroes like Slardar, one thing you can do is... So, let's be realistic here. You know that you're against a Slardar, and he's probably going to crush as soon as he is not stunned anymore, right? So one thing you could do is you could walk all the way down here, outside the range of his stun, like down here, and then just wait for him to use a stun, and then attack him. Sure, you lose out on a bit of damage, because you're not attacking him during that time, but the trade-off is you won't be stunned. Like, you would have gotten like 2 hits off on him here, probably, and you may have bashed him one of those times, and if you bashed him, he was definitely dead. I like that you were waiting for the Bloodseeker to go on the Storm Spirit. But unfortunately, you just weren't able to get the kill. Do you have the tome available? I can't see if anyone's bought the tome quite yet, but if Lions bought it and used it, that's fine. But if the tome's available in the shop right now, you should really buy it, because Nether Strike is pretty powerful. Because it deals quite a bit of damage, and it's the second stun entirely. Monkey King messed up there a bit. Oh well. Skip ahead a little bit more. Looks like your Dragon Knight needs help a bit, maybe. Just make sure whenever you're farming creeps like that, like whenever like you're carrying your mids out of lane and you're just farming creeps like that, just be active, keep your mind aware, and don't miss any last hits. Trust me, I know it's really easy to just auto-attack the wave to push it as fast as possible, and I do that sometimes myself, but you really shouldn't. You should just let the creeps get the other creeps slow and then attack it at the very last second, just like as if you were laning normally. Just because when you're playing a roamer, or like a Spirit Breaker, it's so important for you to be really efficient with all of your farming, because you get so little of it. Because like you don't always get your own time to farm the waves. It only happens a few times a match, especially in the first like 15 minutes or so. So for that reason, you really don't want to miss the last hits when they're really easy to hit like that, because there's usually no one else in lane at that point to stop you from farming. That's a weird Dragon Knight set. Let's go ahead and skip forward a little bit more. It was a little let me see if you could have gotten out there. Yeah, you definitely could have gotten out here. if you had TP'd as soon as the Bloodseeker had ruptured you, you would have gotten away. Like, I'm almost certain of that. But while we're on the subject, I actually have something to say about your build. So, you maxed Greater Bash first with 2 points into charge. To talk about this build, I'd have to say, because you're a roaming Spirit Breaker, that means that you are getting less farm and less experience than most other heroes in the game, usually, unless you're like snowballing or something. But the reason why this is relevant is because Greater Bash is only, how should I put it? Greater Bash is only useful when you're hitting heroes, right? Like, you actually have to hit heroes to trigger it. Like, sure, your Charge of Darkness and your Nether Strike will give you guaranteed bashes as well. But, other than that, you have to just keep attacking people and hope that you land Greater Bashes. And personally, I think that when you're a roaming Spirit Breaker, putting more levels into charge is usually better early. And the reason why is because charge is an extremely reliable disable. You just target the enemy, and unless they stop you or you cancel the charge, you're going to stun them. Greater Bash, although it's pretty good, and the damage scale's pretty nice as well, it's not reliable. Like, sure, you get a Greater Bash during the charge and your ult, but it's usually, I would say, other than that, it's just not reliable. The thing about maxing your charge first and putting more points into it is that the stun duration goes up pretty significantly. So if you look at Greater Bash, it only has a 1.6 second stun, and that applies to your Charge of Darkness as well. However, if you had more points in Charge of Darkness, you would have a stun duration of 2.4 instead, which is a pretty significant difference when you think about it. And also, if we're going to be realistic here, you didn't do badly this game so far, but you haven't done, like, great. Like, you don't really have any farm, and you didn't have treads until almost 15 minutes right now. And you really can't take advantage of Greater Bash early in the game without treads. It's really hard to do so. So that's why personally I like to max Charge of Darkness some more. Put more levels into it, at least, if I'm more of a roaming or support Spirit Breaker. If you're an offlane Spirit Breaker, it can often be worth it to put more points in the Greater Bash, because you will have more levels and farm than you would otherwise, which will allow you to get treads earlier, and also give you a better health pool, and allow you to survive more in relation to other heroes, which is where Greater Bash shines. And also, there's quite a few heroes on the enemy team that are pretty durable. You've got the Earthshaker, the Magnus, and the Slardar. They're all pretty hard to kill, honestly, by yourself. So I think for that reason, putting more points in the Charge Darkness is more worth it. Because Greater Bash is really good when people can't lock you down. And they also, they can't lock you down too much, and they also have a fairly low health pool. But unfortunately, these heroes like all have ways to stop you. Like Bloodseeker has Bloodright and his Rupture. Slardar has Crush and Haze, so you really don't want to go on him either. The Earthshaker, he has all kinds of stuns here. So for that reason, you really just want to be careful when you jump onto the heroes. And maxing Greater Bash first doesn't really lend itself to that playstyle necessarily. I think this is trouble. Yeah, this is not good. You can't, even if this Slardar didn't have Armlet, you can't fight him alone because he actually has more levels than you. He has more health than you regardless, I think, even without the Armlet. And he also has Corrosive Haze, which lowers your armor by a massive 10, so you actually have negative armor right now. and you don't even have your ult available. Even if you had your ult available, you probably wouldn't even be able to kill him regardless. Unfortunately, that's one of the downsides of roaming in support Spirit Breaker, is that you can't really fight heroes like Slardar unless you have a good start. So the only hero you can actually reasonably fight on their team right now is probably the Earthshaker and maybe the PA. You can go on the Bloodseeker if he's already used Rupture, but otherwise, if you jump on any of these heroes alone, you're going to have a bad time. Right now, you should be coordinating with your allies instead of trying to kill them yourself. Solo killing is much more of an offlane Spirit Breaker thing. Okay, you should get this, hopefully. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, that was unfortunate. Yep. One thing you could have done here was you could have attempted to avoid the stun by, after you Nether Striked him, you could have walked back a little bit, because he's going to run this way anyway, right? And you've got charge available. So if you had walked over here instead of waiting right here, you could have just charged him, and then he would either have to, he would be pressured to land his stun just right, so he would stop you, or he would end up getting pushed closer to their tower with the creeps almost dead. I like that you used the urn though, but this guy really is just too tanky for any of you to reasonably do against right now. He just has so much health, and you don't have enough damage. Yeah, Lion didn't have finger there either. I think you should consider getting a wand this game, because you're kind of far behind, and you need a source of burst health to survive in these engagements, because these heroes are so strong. And also the PA and Slardar tend to use a lot of spells. Go ahead and fast forward. Okay, I like that kill. That was good. You need to get out though. You ran the wrong way, so what you should have done was... Did you know there were... Do you see their enemy heroes? Oh, let's see. So you had a quick glimpse of the Slardar and the Bloodseeker here, but you can definitely see the Slardar now. So what you should be doing is... you should be running into the trees right here. Right now, you're a roaming or support Spirit Breaker. You don't have much farm at all. You're doing kind of a little bit badly this game. Not terrible, but you haven't had a great start. So the only thing you're going to be able to contribute in these fights now is by using your charge as well. And by that, I mean you want to angle your charges so that you hit multiple people with them in a fight, if possible. So you need to move over here into these trees and kind of juke until you can hit someone with a charge, or charge away into another lane completely, because you're not going to be able to do anything against the Slardar, and even this Earthshaker is probably going to beat you in a fight unless you get really lucky with the bashes. Skip ahead a little bit more. quick word about Shadowblade. So, Shadowblade Spirit Breaker works best when you tend to already have one other mid-game item. And it's also really good when you can coordinate ganks with your allies, because you can charge in invisible, which is where I personally find most of the value to come from, because you can avoid all their wards and their vision when you're charging due to it. And Silver Edge is definitely good this game because you're against a Phantom Assassin, so you can disable her passives and lower her damage. But the thing is that as far as damage goes, you're pretty so far behind that you're not going to deal any damage for a really long time. So I would suggest right now you may want to consider getting a utility item beforehand, or a item to increase your fighting power. Like, normally when I play Spirit Breaker, I like to go for Echo Saber, but I usually play him in a core and an offlane role, so that might be different. It might be a little too late for an Echo Saber, but what you could do is, like, you could get a, where is it? You could get a Solar Crest. You might have heard about this item, it's pretty good. Even though you personally don't have terribly much physical damage, the heroes in your team still get a lot from it, because Dragon Knight deals a good amount of physical damage when he's in his ult, and Monkey King has tons of physical damage. And also it gives you a nice evasion, and it helps counteract Slaughter's ultimate really well, because it gives you so much armor. So you could have considered getting a Solar Crest this game, since you're doing a little poorly and you want to catch up and you want to win fights. You could also have considered going Force Staff, maybe, but I don't think it would have been that terribly great. Lately, actually, I've been liking Hand of Midas on roaming Spirit Breakers, just because, like, you don't really have any specific item timing that you hit. Like, Treads sort of is a good item timing, but on the other hand, Hand of Midas also gives you attack speed. And even though you get it later, you can still pick up the Gloves of Haste early, which will give you a pretty appreciable attack speed boost. It's 20 attack speed, which is 2/3 of what Treads gives. Anyways, Midas is, I found, to be pretty good on roaming Spirit Breaker, because of how he tends to scale pretty well with items, actually. Like, not that you should necessarily build him for the late game or anything, but when you have a bunch of utility items on him, he can tend to be quite strong, actually. But then again, you had a pretty mediocre start to this game. But if you had stayed with Boots, you may have been able to get a Hand of Midas, or even after your Urn of Shadows, if you had just skipped Treads. Even a late Midas isn't that bad necessarily, because, like I said, for Spirit Breaker, you don't really need specific items all that much. You're not like a lion who really wants to save up for a blink as soon as possible. Let's see if anything else has happened in this game. Okay, you found the Earthshaker. Okay, nice, got a kill. Pretty simple. I think, so I haven't really brought this up yet, because I figured you would be doing it at some point, but you're not farming at all. Like I said, Spirit Breaker doesn't necessarily need items, but you're kind of not farming in a lot of these opportunities just so you can stay hidden. And I don't think that's necessarily a great idea, because, like, having more gold helps you get kills, like, more than necessarily hiding wood in these cases. And you could have had your Shadowblade much faster if you had actually stepped out into the waves and killed some creeps. And if you didn't want to purchase a Midas, you could have just built an Iron Talon, which is a great Midas substitute, and just jungled some in between your ganks. Because you have such high armor and good base damage that you can just farm the camps pretty decently. And that Iron Talon is probably going to earn you like at least 2,000 gold over a game from all the camps you take. It's almost like a poor man's Midas, in a way. I guess you didn't really need help on that. Okay, I guess you're waiting for the right opportunity. Okay, that was good to go on the Saldar there. Okay, good counter gank. Almost got your Shadow Blade, which should help quite a bit in landing charges and escaping from your enemy. I guess you wanted to avoid the RP there. I don't know why you're sitting invisible. I guess that you figured they didn't really need your help. Let's go ahead and go for it a little bit more. You're finally taking some jungle camps. It's good. You need to get more farm, just because it'll help you get more kills and more experience. I don't think you need to be sitting this far back. Charge still takes time to get to the enemy, so you don't want to be sitting. You shouldn't have been sitting that far back. I think you should have been much closer, I think. And you would have been able to save your teammates that dived there. They probably would still be alive. If you would just like sit like over here instead of all the way over here. And if you had used charge sooner. Like, sure, you won the fight, but I think you could have won that fight much harder with you and at least one or two other people surviving. And even if not you, you probably could have saved the Dragon Knight. And right now, you're building a Heaven's Halberd. And let's talk about Heaven's Halberd for a bit, because I'm going to make some pretty broad statements you might disagree with, but I'm going to say them anyways, because it's my honest opinion. Honestly, if you ask me, I think there is one item in this game that is pretty much a better total replacement for Heaven's Halberd, except in the very few fringe scenarios. And the item that can replace it is Solar Crust. And like I said, that's a pretty broad and sweeping generalization, but with Solar Crust being buffed over the last few patches, I feel like it's just gotten more and more true. And here's the reason why. So let's go to Halberd. Where are you? Just type it in. Okay, Halberd. It costs 3,500 gold. It gives you 25% evasion, 25 damage, 20 strength, as well as the main passive. Now, the strength gives you 400 health, and you can use the active to disarm enemies. And for melee opponents, it's 3 seconds, and for ranged opponents, it's 5.5 seconds. Now, I think Heaven's Halberd is almost always inferior to Solar Crest, except in the situations where you're against very specific ranged heroes. And here's the explanation why. So why would you buy Heaven's Halberd? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. You buy it so you can disarm enemies, right? So that way they can't fight you or your heroes, and your heroes can attack them safely without being in fear of attacked back themselves. Well, the problem is, Solar Crest already does that and more. Let's take a look at Solar Crest. It gives you 12 armor, some mana regen, a good chunk of evasion, same amount as evasion as Halberd, and it also gives you the amazing Shine active. And the Shine active does most of the things the Halberd does anyways. So if you use the shine ability on an enemy, it decreases their armor by 12 and gives them a 25% miss chance. A lot of the time, that has a similar effect as a halberd, because most enemies do not want to fight with minus 12 armor and a 25% miss chance. If you want to compare this, take a look at Desolator, which is... I can't see it. Desolator. Okay. Desolator gives a bunch of damage and has a armor reduction of 7. So I'm sure you've been in a game where you've been hit by like a Phantom Assassin or a Templar Assassin with a Desolator, and all of a sudden you're taking like 1 billion damage, right? Well, think of it like this. Solar Crest, even though it doesn't technically give damage like Deso does, it's minus 12 armor instead of minus 7. And the minus 12 is very significant. Like, it makes it so that you effectively can't fight a lot of heroes with it active, especially when you consider the miss chance. Like, sometimes, depending on your hero, you can fight through it, but many heroes just cannot because it's such a significant change. They just lose 12 armor and have a 25% chance to miss. So a lot of times they've got no option but to either fight and die anyways, or just try to run. It accomplishes a lot of what Halberd does as well with that. And Solar Crest also has additional benefits in that Solar Crest has 100% uptime. You can use Solar Crest on allies. It doesn't cost any mana whatsoever to use. And also, one issue I've had with Halberd is that the cast range is 600 units. 600 is pretty small. Like, you won't feel this because the enemy team is all made up of melee heroes, but you would want to buy... I mean, you would think you would want to buy Halberd against heroes like Sniper, right? Or the ranged Lone Druid. But the thing is, Heaven's Halberd is actually pretty terrible against them most of the time, because you have to get within 600 range anyway, and those heroes are usually attacking you from ranges much higher than that, like 1000 or whatever. Well, Solar Crest has a cast range of 1 frickin' 1000. That's huge, dude. You can be like right here and cast it. You can be on the stairs right here and cast it almost into the Roche Pit. It's so significantly large. It's like almost twice as long as the Halberd cast range. And as I mentioned, you can also use Solar Crest on allies, and that'll give them a significant boost in survivability. 12 armor and 25% evasion is a lot to give an ally. And the one benefit that Halberd gives that Solar doesn't is that Halberd gives you health, but the thing is, Solar Crest's armor and the evasion it gives will both give evasion, but the armor from Solar Crest usually makes up for it not giving a health boost. And what else was there? Oh yeah, Halberd is really only better when you're against very specific heroes, like take Medusa for example. Medusa doesn't always get a Dragonlance, and her attack range is 600 normally, so you can reasonably get pretty close to her. And she doesn't like buying BKB. So Halberd is really good against Medusa, but against most other heroes, I would say that Solar Crest is just straight up better. Because as a Spirit Breaker, you already have a ton of health. You have almost 2,000 health, so the extra 12 armor is going to help you significantly more than the 400 health that the Halberd gives you. And although Halberd does give you straight damage, gives you 45 damage as well, I would say that the Solar Crest is going to be better because you can use the Solar Crest actively, and the active should net you a close to the amount of damage the Halberd would give you. Also, the Solar Crest is about 800, 900 gold cheaper. So I know it was just after the major, and Solar Crest was a very purchased item, so it's probably going to be nerfed into the ground. But as of the time of making this video, I honestly think that in like 99% of situations where you would buy a Halberd, you could just replace it with a Solar Crest anyways, and have a much more effective item. Even on Spirit Breaker, I would say it's a fairly solid item, just because it gives you a ton of survivability. And you can use the active on your allies and the enemy as well. fast forward a little bit more. Might be winding up here soon. Yeah, I didn't count exactly there, but you could have gotten every single one of those last hits if you had attacked the creeps in the right order. So just make sure, like I said, when you're farming creeps like that and there's no enemies nearby, you're just farming it safely alone. Just do all you can to make sure you get every single last hit. Because even though it might not seem like it matters, it does. They will add up over the course of the game. There's probably like at least like 10, 15, maybe even 20 last hits you missed that you could have gotten. And that could be up like 400, 600, 800 gold. I'm just going to take a quick look at your talents. I think you should have gotten the armor this game, because you're already so far behind in terms of farm now. Well, you're not really that behind in terms of farm, but let's look at net worth actually. So you're okay on net worth. Most of the other heroes in the enemy team are higher than you, but that's to be expected. But I would say against their lineup especially, you need the armor against that Slaughter Corrosive Haze. Like if you had if you were building a Solar Crest and you took this armor talent, you would have 17 armor and 25% evasion. So Slaughter's Corrosive Haze would almost be completely nullified. I think the 20 damage has a place, but I don't think it's very good unless you have like a Echo Saber to take advantage of it. Otherwise, I think the 5 armor is much better, because Spirit Breaker tends to kind of run into survivability issues in the mid and late game, because his stat gains are pretty bad. Like 2.4 strength per level is pretty low for a strength-based hero. Like sure, his starting health and armor are great, but it really doesn't scale into the later portions of the game all that well. Right now, I'm just going to take a quick look at what else you got. 20 damage, 120 gold per minute. What's the other choice? I think for level 20 talent, arguments could be made for either one of those. Spirit Breaker scales pretty well with gold, but the minus respawn time is also nice. When did you get those items? Okay, so you got Halberd, and you got Silver Edge. Okay, I think that was correct, because they have the PA there. That was correct to buy next, because that'll disable her evasion. And also it should disable the passive on Bloodseeker as well, if you need to go on him. Looks like you got a Blade Mail last. I think that's okay. Yeah, Blade Mail is okay this game. I would say it's not optimal, because most of the enemy heroes are pretty durable at that point. They don't have like fragile heroes that have lots of area of effect spells, but you can use it against the PA if you get jumped on, or the Slaughter, or even the Bloodseeker. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and cut it at that. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment, and I'll be more than happy to respond.